4 Crowns. Episode 2. The Rite. Written by Mia. You get to Veymoor by going somewhere that isn't anywhere. Through a door in the back of a flooded underpass that shouldn't have existed, that I'd walked past 1,000 times and never seen, because you can't see the city until the city has decided to be seen by you. And on the night of the worst year of my life, with for impossible men around me like a moving wall, the city decided. I'd braced for a lot of things. I had not braced for beauty. Veymoor rose out of the dark on the far side of that door like something the world had dreamed and then deliberately forgotten. Towers of black stone and stranger materials, bridges strung between them like held breaths, the whole impossible sprawl lit in 4 colors that I understood, before anyone told me, were the 4 houses. Violet light bleeding from the high shadow spires of the east. Gold burning in the flame district below. Teal glowing soft along the tight canals that threaded the whole city like veins. And iron red, low and hot, from the forges and the war halls where House Iron kept its strength. 4 colors, 4 crowns. A city built on a truce between 4 things that wanted to kill each other, holding its breath for 2 weeks now, waiting to see whether a bartender would come and give it a reason to keep breathing. "It's beautiful," I said, before I could stop myself. "It's a powder keg with good lighting," Sable said. But Cass, beside me, watched my face instead of the city, and something in his golden grin had gone soft and unguarded for just a second. "She likes it," he said quietly, to no one, like it mattered. "Sable, she likes it." And I filed that away, that the charmer noticed what I loved, and looked like a man who'd been starving to find a thing he could give someone. We crossed a bridge so high and so thin I stopped breathing, and Bram moved without being asked to the open side between me and the long fall and said nothing about it, and somehow that wordlessness undid me more than Cass's chatter. The city watched us go. I felt it. Eyes in violet windows, faces turning in the gold streets below, a whisper running ahead of us through the tight canals. The Keystone's come. The heir is here. 2 weeks they'd been waiting to learn if they'd live, and now they were looking at the answer. And the answer was a woman in a bartender's apron she'd forgotten to take off, river damp in her hair, a paring knife she refused to give back. I saw the hope in their faces and wanted to tell every one of them not to put it on me, because I was the last person in any world you should hang a city on. People who hope that you end up disappointed. I'd made a life study of it. "They shouldn't look at me like that," I said low. "Like what?" said Rune. "Like I'm going to save them." He was quiet a moment, matching my pace. "They're not looking at you like you'll save them," he said. "They're looking at you like you came. After 2 weeks of being told no one would. You'd be surprised how far just coming gets you with people who've been left." And I had to look away across the 4-colored dark because he kept doing that, the quiet one, kept saying the thing that walked straight through the wall instead of around it. They took me to the Accord Hall, and that's where the beauty stopped and the using started, right on schedule, exactly the way it always had my whole life. 4 thrones, 1 for each house, ranged around a circle of pale stone, and on them, not my 4, the heads of the houses. The ones who held the power the 4 champions answered to. I learned their names later. That night they were just 4 sets of eyes measuring me the way you measure livestock, for powers deciding what I was worth and how to spend me, and I knew that look. God, I knew that look. I'd been looked at like that across 11 kitchen tables by people calculating the foster stipend against the trouble. So this is the Keystone. The head of House Shadow, Sable's house, a tall, cold woman who shared his eyes and none of whatever it was that had made him tell me the truth in my bar, circled me slowly. Smaller than I hoped.
Common.
Raised in the mud with no training and no idea what she's carrying. And we're to hang the survival of Veymoor on this. She stopped. Bind her tonight before she understands enough to have opinions about it, and let's be done. She's standing right here, I said. And she has opinions already, starting with that one. The hall went silent. Cass made a sound that was almost a laugh and turned it into a cough. And the head of House Iron, a slab of a man, Bram's house, with Bram's wariness aged into something harder, leaned forward and said, not unkindly, "Then have your opinions quickly, girl. There are houses in this city already sharpening knives for the day the accord breaks. You're the only thing standing between Veymoor and a war that will eat 100,000 people who never asked for it. So yes, you have opinions. And then you bind, because the alternative is a grave with a city in it." I looked at the four of them on their thrones while he said it. The cold woman of House Shadow, who wore her power like a blade she'd already decided to use. The slab of House Iron, hard but not cruel, a man who'd clearly counted the 100,000 graves and lost sleep over them. The head of House Tide, older, watchful, saying nothing, seeing everything, the way Rune did. And House Flame's head, a beautiful smiling man who looked like Cass might look in 30 years if the world finished with him the way it had clearly started to, all charm and no warmth left under it, watching me with an interest I didn't like at all, the interest of a man pricing a thing he means to acquire. For houses, for powers. And behind the unity they were demanding of me, I could already feel it. The thing Sable had called a powder keg, for old hatreds barely banked, for sets of ambitions the accord had frozen but never killed. They needed me to hold them together. And not one of them, I understood, looking at those four faces, had entirely given up on the dream of being the last house standing when it all finally came apart. They wanted the keystone. They also, each of them, in the locked private rooms of their old ambition, wanted to be the hand that held it. Here is the thing none of them had counted on, because they'd all read my file the way the Marchettis. No, wrong life, different woman, but the same lesson, learned the same hard way. I had spent 26 years being told that I was a thing other people needed, a stipend, a slot to fill, a problem to be placed, and I had learned that the only power a used thing ever gets is the power to refuse. "No," I said. The hall erupted. I let it. I stood in the middle of 4 furious houses and a city 2 weeks from war, and I waited until the cold woman of House Shadow snapped no, like I'd spoken a foreign word, and then I said the thing I'd been building since the door of my bar opened. Not no forever. No like this. I turned, slowly, so I was talking to all 4 thrones, and the 4 champions ranged behind me both at once. You want to bind me to your 4 houses to save your city. Fine. I even believe it's necessary. I've seen the thing that came through my door. I know what's coming. But every single person who has ever needed me has done exactly what you're doing right now, decided what I was for and arranged me, and never once asked. And I'm done being arranged. My voice didn't shake. 26 years of practice. So, here are my opinions. I bind to the 4 houses, through these 4 men, who walked through fire for a stranger, which is more than any of you on those thrones have done. Not to you. To them. And I do it because I choose to, tonight, with my eyes open, or I walk back through that underpass and you can have your war, because a keystone you have to force is a keystone that cracks. Those are the terms. I'm the only one in this room who can set them, and we all just found that out together. Silence. And then, from behind me, low, Rune's voice, with that current under it. She's right. The right won't hold on a 4 stinker. It never has. And Bram, rougher. She sets the terms. Or, I'm not standing in the circle. And Cass, lightly, dangerously. Funny, neither am I. And Sable, after a long cold pause, the corner of his mouth moving. It appears, Mother, that the Keystone has acquired a house of her own. 4 of them. How inconvenient for everyone. The rite was held at the dark heart of the city, in a round chamber open to all 4 colors of light at once, and I will not pretend I understood the half of it. There were words in a language that predated language. There was a circle of pale stone that drank the 4 lights and turned them, where they met in the center where I stood, into something that was all 4, and none of them. And there were the 4 men, one at each point of the compass, each holding out a hand to me across the circle. It binds through touch and through will, Sable had told me before. Ours and yours. We give you a thread of each house. You hold all 4, or it holds nothing. And once it's done, even his cold voice had hesitated, you'll feel us. Always. The 4 of us, like 4 rooms in a house you didn't know you had. It's not a small thing, Ava. It's the least small thing there is. You should know that before you reach out your hands. I reached out my hands. I won't tell you all of it, some provenance you keep. I've learned that much already about being the kind of woman this is happening to. But I'll tell you that when the 4 threads caught, shadow and flame and tide and iron, for impossible currents pouring into the empty locked rooms of a girl who'd spent her whole life making sure no one ever got inside, I did not feel used. For the first time, with 4 houses worth of power binding itself to me forever, I did not feel used. I felt the opposite of it, the thing I'd spent 26 years building walls against. I felt found. For presences blooming awake in my chest at once, distinct as the men themselves. Sable's cold, exact focus, Cass's golden ache, Rune's deep, steady tide, Bram's burning, fierce devotion, for rooms in a house I didn't know I had, and every one of them, for the first time in my life, lit and occupied and warm. And the 4 of them, across the circle, felt me too. I watched it happen. I watched 4 dangerous men who'd been bound to a stranger they weren't allowed to fight over or fully of go absolutely still as the Rite poured me into them, and I watched each of them, in his own way, lose a fight he'd clearly been planning to win. Sable's careful eyes going wide. Cass's grin gone entirely, replaced by something naked. Rune's steady face breaking open like a wave. And Bram, amber eyes blown black, looking at me across the light like a man who'd just been handed the one thing he'd never let himself pray for. For a moment none of us moved, and the 4 threads sang between us, and I understood something the houses on their thrones would never feel and never forgive me for feeling, that this was not a transaction. They built the Rite to be one, a neutral anchor, a political device, a chain to keep any house from owning the Keystone. But you cannot pour 4 people into one another and keep it clean. I felt their wanting and they felt mine. And the wanting was not tidy and it was not equal, and it was absolutely not the bloodless arrangement 4 Thrones had ordered. Sable wanted me the way a man wants the one thing he can't strategize his way out of, and hated it. Cass wanted me the way a man wants, just once, to be chosen for something other than his charm. Rune wanted me the way the tide wants the shore, patient, total, certain. And Bram wanted me with his whole feral heart and no defenses at all, and through the new thread of him, I felt that he had given up, in the space of the Rite, on ever pretending otherwise. For men, one law forbidding me to choose, and a bond that had just made the not choosing the single hardest thing any of the 5 of us would ever have to do. It was done. I was the Keystone of Veymoor, bound to 4 houses through 4 men, the accord re-anchored. The city pulled back 1 step from the grave. I should have felt the weight of it. Instead, I stood in the 4-colored light with 4 new rooms lit in my chest and understood that I was in the most catastrophic danger of my entire dangerous life. Not from the thing that came through my door, not from the houses on their thrones, but from this, that a woman who had survived everything by never letting anyone in had just, by ancient law and her own stubborn choice, let in 4 men at once, forever, and was not allowed to choose a single one of them without breaking a city. And then, as the light faded and the 4 of them came toward me across the circle, as I felt, through 4 new threads, for different kinds of wanting reaching for me at once, the cold woman of House Shadow spoke from the doorway, and her voice had changed, and the change was the first cold drop of everything that came after. "It's done," Sable's mother said softly, watching the 5 of us with an expression I couldn't read and would spend the next weeks learning to fear. "The keystone holds. The accord stands. A pause. For now. Sleep while you can, little keystone." Bound things break in such interesting ways, and not everyone in this city, my son, wants the accord to hold as badly as you've apparently decided to. And she was gone, and the 4 men went still around me, and I understood that somewhere in the beautiful powder keg city I'd just bound myself to, someone with a throne had wanted this right to fail, and was going to be very, very disappointed that it hadn't. To be continued. That was episode 2 of 4 Crowns. If the 4 of them have you now, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus scenes are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
I'm Mia.
Thank you for listening.